Before Layne Staley, the lead vocalist of Alice in Chains, passed away in April 2002 at the age of 34 in a condominium in Seattle, fans believed they knew him. Furthermore, the subsequent revelations made by friends and family demonstrated the extent to which Staley was actually understood. The idea that Staley was a huge lover of heavy metal music is something that should come as a bit of a surprise. Sleaze, which was eventually renamed Alice in Chains, was the name of the metal band that Staley fronted in the middle of the 1980s before he began his foray into experimental grunge. This is something that is widely known, but it's possible that some fans are unaware of how early Staley's passion for metal music began. After he passed away, his mother, Nancy McCallum, revealed that Staley had picked up his first instrument, the trumpet, while he was in the 5th grade. But he swiftly relinquished it in favor of something more desirable. The drums were something that he cherished, she said to Northwest Music Scene. Thomas became his middle name after our neighbor sold him a drum equipment. After that, he changed his name to Thomas. But why Thomas? The drummer Tommy Lee of the hair metal band Motley Crue from the 1980s was honored with this homage, which was one of his favorite musicians. During the latter part of the 1980s, Alice in Chains broke apart. After that, Staley moved on to start a new band, and with the approval of his former bandmates, Stanley suggested that they call their new band Alice in Chains. Staley was the lead vocalist for the band, and Cantrell was responsible for supplying harmonies and counterpoint. The couple acted as the creative power and vocal tandem for their band. Later on, Cantrell began his career as a solo artist, and after Staley passed away, he joined the reformed Alice in Chains to perform songwriting duties. However, Cantrell claims that if it weren't for Staley, he might not have been able to perform any of that singing at all. According to what he shared with Guitar World in 2009, Staley was the one who requested that he sing. It was Layne who was most responsible for instilling in me the self-assurance to develop my singing skills further. It was his way of saying, he wrote this song, and it has some significance to you. Sing it. My rear end was thrown out of the nest by him. I miss them a great deal because we work together as a team. I adore them, and I miss them horribly right now. After Staley passed away as a result of an accidental overdose, former Alice in Chains bassist Mike Starr disclosed that Staley had once saved his life by preventing him from overdosing. As a result of Starr's struggles with substance misuse, the band terminated him from his position in 1993. Starr and Alice in Chains performed an appearance at the Hollywood Rock Festival in Brazil, alongside Nirvana, just prior to Starr's departure from the band. During the trip, Starr spent a number of hours injecting heroin in a restroom with Kurt Cobain, the frontman for Nirvana, and Courtney Love, who was married to Kurt Cobain. He then joined Staley for another dose of the potent opiate that he had been working with. Dr. Drew Pinsky was informed by Starr in the year 2010. I went to Layne's room, we shot up, and I overdosed there. Starr was unable to recall what took place after that period of time. Staley informed him that he had stopped breathing and did not have a pulse, and as a result, he attempted to bring him back to life by striking him and placing him under a shower. After regaining consciousness, Starr discovered that, according to Staley, he had been technically dead for a total of 11 minutes. The bassists were under the impression that Staley's acts were responsible for his resuscitation. Overdosing on drugs was the tragic cause of Starr's death in 2011. Immediately following Mike Starr's dismissal from Alice in Chains, bassist Mike Inez became a member of the band. During the fall of that year, Alice in Chains performed a number of gigs in Japan. Inez later disclosed that Staley took advantage of the opportunity to investigate other alternative potential career paths. During the Alice in Chains reunion tour that took place in 2010, Inez revealed to Revolver that his bandmate Staley vanished during a break between performances while they were in Tokyo to perform. Even after a few days had passed, we were unable to locate Layne anywhere. Just like that, we were going around the streets of Tokyo, looking at all of the places that he could be interested in. After a while, they quit trying and headed into a bar that they had been told was frequented by models. This is where they discovered Staley, who stated that he only desired to have the experience of being a regular guy for a short period of time. Based on Inez's account, the story is true. In addition to being a bartender, Layne is also responsible for blowing fire behind the bar. Therefore, he decided to get a job at a bar for a couple of evenings, solely for the purpose of going to the bar. And he didn't even really tell people who he was. During the 1990s, MTV Unplugged was widely considered to be among the most prestigious platforms for bands to exhibit their talents. During that time period, the most prominent musicians would perform their songs in a small, intimate setting, typically using acoustic string instruments. Alice in Chains made an appearance on the show in 1996. However, the performance was almost a complete failure. In 2018, Cantrell disclosed that Staley was experiencing a significant amount of difficulty with his heroin addiction, to the extent that he needed many takes in order to finish a song that was included on their most recent album. I'll tell you a funny story. When we were in New York for the Unplugged event, Layne kept *ing up Sludge Factory. Approximately 8 times, we did it. At the beginning of the second verse, he blew the same thing. It was decided to keep his errors in the version that was broadcast. A vulgarity is audibly mumbled by him, and they are required to begin the process once more. A few of those are permitted for us to have. It's been quite some time. Demry Perot, who had been Staley's fiancée at one point, passed away in 1996 due to a heart problem that was caused by her drug use. In the same year, Alice in Chains went on hiatus, in part because of the situation with Staley's health, and the singer moved into his apartment in Seattle, where he remained there for an almost indefinite period of time. In order to satisfy his intense addiction to illegal substances, he would have his employees go out and purchase them for him. On the other hand, Cantrell disclosed in the book Alice in Chains, the untold story that Staley never stopped creating music. This revelation was made in the year 2010. I'd have * go over to his place and he'd be playing me he'd be writing all the time, he added. He would be writing all the time. I too would do that. When he played me anything, I would play him something, and vice versa. In 2016, it was announced that there will be a collection of 8 songs by Staley that had never been heard before. However, the tracks have not yet been launched in an official capacity. It was common knowledge that Staley was a drug user, particularly at the time that he was heading Alice in Chains. A significant number of the band's songs dealt with substance misuse and related topics, and the lyrics of these songs reflected Staley's own personal experiences. On the other hand, he admitted to Rolling Stone in 1996 that he had significant regrets. In spite of the fact that I wrote about drugs, I did not believe that I was being reckless or recklessly dangerous by doing so. They were great when I took drugs, and they worked for me for years, but now they are turning against me, and now I am traveling through hell, and this is a terrible situation. Staley's mother claims that the artist came dangerously close to passing away from an overdose 5 times before his fatal overdose. On each of those occasions, he only managed to survive because other people were present and stopped him from passing out. But what fans didn't know until after his death was how much effort Staley put into being clean and sober was really difficult to comprehend. There were 10 different occasions on which he enrolled in drug treatment facilities. However, unfortunately, none of them proved to be helpful during the course of his recovery. It was on April 5, 2002, the day that he passed away as a result of an overdose on heroin, that his mother was working at a rehabilitation center in Seattle. She was just a few days away from making an attempt to enroll Staley in a new treatment program. Staley received a guest at his house on April 4, 2002, just one day before he passed away. The guest was Mike Starr, who wanted to celebrate his 36th birthday with his buddy and colleague. Staley was happy to have him there. They spent time together watching television, especially the program Crossing Over, in which a fictitious psychic made an attempt to assist members of the studio audience in communicating with their deceased relatives. In response to this, Staley went on to talk about how, the night before, he had the impression that he had been visited by the ghost of Demry Perot. During the course of Alice in Chains, The Untold Story, Starr disclosed that Staley had informed him that Demry was here last night. I don't care if you believe me or not, guy. I don't give a F about it. Let me tell you, Demry was present at this location yesterday night. On the other hand, Starr was more concerned about Staley's drastically deteriorating physical condition than he was about his mental condition. It was reported by Rolling Stone that during the final year of his life, Staley had acquired abscesses all over his arms as a result of injecting a significant amount of heroin. Additionally, the bulk of his teeth had been pulled out. Despite the fact that Starr was concerned about Staley's health to the extent that he urged that she get medical treatment, Staley vehemently refused to accept assistance. On the day of my birthday, Starr disclosed in an episode of Loveline from the year 2010 that I had spent the entire day with him. attempting to keep him alive. You know, I even asked him if I could call 911, and he told me that if I did, he would never talk to me again. Of course, I didn't know that he was going to die, or else I would have called 911 regardless. According to reports, Staley was in the process of making preparations for a musical collaboration with the up-and-coming band Taproot just before he passed away. On Facebook, Taproot shared their thoughts on the event, describing what they saw. Layne Staley was scheduled to record vocals for a song that Taproot was planning to include on our album Welcome immediately before he went away. Due to the fact that it did not appear to be suitable, we never discussed this topic very much. The producer of Taproot, Toby Wright, who was still close with Staley after collaborating on various Alice in Chains albums, was impressed by the song titled Kevin Spacey, which was described as having a spacey vibe. Tragically, however, Staley passed away before he had the opportunity to compose any lyrics or record his voice. Since then, the band has played the song as an instrumental instead of singing it. Before he passed away in 2002, it is possible that the demo that Staley got was the very last song that he listened to. Within the CD player of his condominium, the disc was discovered. At the beginning of the 21st century, Staley, who was becoming more reclusive, would only occasionally leave his home in Seattle. During the 19th of April in the year 2002, accountants who worked for the musician discovered that he had not accessed his bank accounts for about 2 weeks. They reached out to Staley's mother, who had not seen or spoken to her son throughout the same time period, and they were alarmed by this information. During the course of the wellness check, she was accompanied by the Seattle Police Department to the condominium. Once they broke down the door, they discovered Staley's body sitting erect on the couch, surrounded by various drugs and drug paraphernalia. It took some time before Staley's identification could be established. In the following day, an autopsy was performed, which confirmed that it was in fact him. An overdose of drugs was the cause of death for Staley, as determined by the autopsy. At the time of his passing, he weighed 86 pounds, showing that his weight had decreased. In addition, the research indicated that he had passed away approximately 2 weeks prior to the discovery of his body. At that time, the frontman for Alice in Chains was 34 years old. Nevertheless, you will lose your kid if your child passes away. The child, who is 4 years old, is lost. In the event that you or anybody you know is struggling with addiction concerns, assistance is accessible to you. You can get in touch with the National Helpline of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.